All right, so are you ready to dive into some dog training wisdom today?
Always up for that.
Awesome. Well, today we're going to be dissecting one of Zach George's YouTube videos. I think it's called Dog Training 101, How to Train Any Doggy, the Basics.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
I mean, it's one thing to read tips in a book, right? But seeing it all play out in his real life class with like all different kinds of dogs,
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole other level of learning.
Absolutely. And one of the things that really struck me was how Zach views high energy dogs.
Oh yeah, he's all about those hyper pups. He actually sees that energy as a sign of intelligence.
Right. Instead of seeing it as a problem, he sees it as potential.
Yeah, it really makes you rethink those stereotypes about certain breeds.
Yeah.
Like, how do you channel all that energy into actual learning?
Well, one technique he uses a lot is exaggerated body language,
Oh, interesting.
especially in the beginning stages of training. So think big, clear hand signals and movements, because dogs are wired to pick up on those physical cues even more than just our verbal commands.
That makes sense.
Hmm.
It's like they're reading our body language before they even process the words, which makes me wonder sometimes if I'm sending mixed signals to my dog without realizing it.
It's definitely something to be mindful of.
Totally. But to actually teach those commands, Zach's a big fan of the clicker, right?
He is. And it's not just about rewarding with treats. The clicker acts as a very precise marker. It's like a snapshot of the exact moment the dog does the right thing.
Okay, so it's all about that timing.
Exactly. It helps with clarity, especially when a dog is still figuring things out.
And he also talks about matching the dog's pace, which seems super important when you're working with those fast movers.
Yeah.
But isn't there a risk of like getting swept up in their energy and losing control?
Yeah, there's definitely a balance. You don't want to become hyper yourself, but you need to be aware of their energy levels and kind of use it to your advantage. You're anticipating their actions and you're ready to reward them at the right moment.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's like you're catching a wave. You have to be in sync with their rhythm to really make it work. But let's talk about some of the specific exercises that Zach demonstrates in the video. The one that really caught my eye was his leave it training.
Oh, yeah, where he uses the food on the floor.
Yeah, to teach a dog to resist temptation.
Classic. What I find fascinating is how he focuses on restraint and communication rather than just yanking the dog away. He's blocking the food, but he's also conveying a clear message with his energy and body language.
So it's not just about the words leave it, it's the whole package. And I notice he actually clicks and rewards when the dog looks away from the food, not just when they completely ignore it.
That's a really important point. He's rewarding those baby steps, those small wins.
Because sometimes even a glance away from the temptation is a big deal for a dog who's still learning.
Right. It's about shaping the behavior little by little, not expecting them to be perfect right away.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to teaching those classic commands like sit and down, Zach seems to prefer lure training in the video.
Lure training is all about using, well, a lure, usually a tasty treat, to guide the dog into the position you want. It's a really effective way to tap into their natural instincts and make learning feel like a game.
I've tried lure training with my own dog, but I think I might be moving the lure too fast because he doesn't always get it.
Yeah.
Zach really seems to emphasize those slow and deliberate movements.
You're right, he does. That's a common mistake people make. Think about it. A quick, jerky movement can be confusing for the dog,
Right.
but a smooth, slow lure is like a clear invitation to follow along.
So it's all about making it easy for them to understand.
Exactly. It goes back to that clear communication. And speaking of clear communication, there was this moment that really stood out to me in the video.
Okay, which one?
Remember when he clicks and rewards a dog who doesn't fully lie down but is clearly trying?
Oh, yeah. I was like, wait, he didn't even do it all the way?
Yeah.
But then I realized it was all about recognizing that effort.
Exactly. And I think that's such a powerful lesson for us as trainers. It's not just about the end result, but about those almost there moments.
Because let's be honest, sometimes even a half-hearted attempt is a huge victory for a dog who's still learning the ropes.
Absolutely. Those small wins build their confidence and keep them motivated.
Speaking of motivation, Zach also talks about this idea of momentum in training and how important it is to recognize those moments when your dog is fully engaged and capitalize on that focus.
It's about reading their cues, seeing when they're in that sweet spot of learning, and really making the most of it.
So it's not just about following a rigid plan, but being adaptable and responsive to your dog's energy levels.
Exactly. And one thing that contributes to that momentum is the connection between you and your dog.
Oh, that's interesting. Zach talks about that a lot, like how his own energy and enthusiasm play a role in how the dogs respond.
He does, and it makes sense if you think about it. When we're genuinely excited about training, our dogs pick up on that.
It's like our energy is contagious,
Yeah.
and their progress then fuels our motivation. So it becomes this positive feedback loop.
Exactly. And that's where I think the real magic of dog training lies.
It's not just about teaching commands. It's about building a deeper bond, a true partnership with our dogs. I'm really curious to hear more about how Zach translates this into his training techniques. Okay, so we're back, and we're talking about that amazing connection between a dog and their trainer.
That's the heart of it all, really. Zach's philosophy really shines through in how he tailors his approach to each individual dog.
Right, it's not like he has this one-size-fits-all method. He's always reading the room, so to speak, adjusting his energy and pace to match the dog's personality.
He even says in the video, I personally like energetic dogs to work with, but that's me. Everyone's different.
I love that he acknowledges that there's so many different ways to train. What matters most is finding what works for both you and your dog.
And that brings up another point. We were talking about high energy dogs earlier
Yeah.
and how important it is to provide outlets for their energy beyond just training.
Oh, absolutely. Especially those breeds that were bred to work or herd. They need a job.
Exactly. So think long walks, playtime at the park, maybe even some dog sports. Anything to help them burn off that extra energy in a healthy way.
Otherwise, they're going to find other, less desirable ways to express themselves.
Right. Chewing on furniture, barking excessively. They're trying to tell us they need to move.
A tired dog is a happy dog.
And often a much better behaved dog.
You know, watching Zach work with those dogs, I was really struck by his patience. He never seems to get frustrated even when a dog isn't picking things up right away.
Yeah, his demeanor is so calm and reassuring. It's definitely something to aspire to.
I know I could use a little more of that in my life.
But it's so important to remember that dogs are very sensitive to our emotions. If we're stressed or anxious, they'll pick up on that.
And it can totally derail the training.
Absolutely. So taking those deep breaths, staying positive, and approaching training with a playful attitude can make a world of difference.
It's about making it fun for both of us.
Right. Creating that positive learning environment where your dog feels safe to make mistakes.
So we've talked about matching the dog's energy, being patient, and creating that positive vibe. But let's circle back to something we mentioned earlier, that clear communication. How do we make sure we're speaking our dog's language?
It's about more than just the words we use. It's about our body language, our tone of voice, even our intention behind those words.
Because dogs are masters at reading us.
Oh, absolutely. They're constantly observing us, trying to figure out what we want from them.
And if we're sending mixed signals or our cues are inconsistent, it can create so much confusion for them.
It's like trying to learn a new dance when your partner keeps changing the steps. It's just not going to work.
That's a great analogy. So being consistent with our cues, making sure our actions match our words, and being mindful of our body language are all crucial for that clear communication.
And that communication builds trust, which is the foundation of any successful training relationship. And another thing that Zach does really well is celebrating those little wins.
Oh, yeah. Do you remember the moment when he clicked and rewarded the dog who didn't quite lie down all the way, but was clearly making an effort?
Such a good example of positive reinforcement. It's not about waiting for perfection, but recognizing those tiny steps in the right direction.
Because sometimes just a little progress is a huge accomplishment for a dog who's still learning.
Right. And by acknowledging and rewarding those small wins, we're encouraging them to keep trying.
So they build confidence and momentum.
Exactly. It's like building a house brick by brick. Each interaction, each moment of connection contributes to the overall structure of their learning.
And a solid foundation is everything in dog training. So we've talked about trust, communication, patience, and those little wins. But Zach also mentions this concept of momentum in training. What did you make of that?
He's talking about recognizing those moments when your dog is totally engaged and really tuned into you, and capitalizing on those moments to reinforce the behavior you're working on.
Seizing the opportunity.
Exactly. You're riding that wave of focus and turning it into a really powerful learning experience.
I love that analogy of catching a wave.
Mm.
It's like you have to be in sync with your dog's energy to make the most of those moments.
And sometimes that momentum can come from unexpected places. Like Zach talks about how genuine enthusiasm and connection with the dog can actually influence their responsiveness.
It's contagious.
He loves working with high-energy dogs because of their eagerness to learn, and I think that passion rubs off on them.
It's that positive feedback loop again. Our energy feeds their learning, and their progress feeds our motivation.
It becomes this beautiful back and forth.
So even if you're feeling a little frustrated or discouraged, Remember that your own attitude can make a huge difference in how your dog responds.
Bringing that genuine excitement and joy to your training sessions can really transform the whole experience for both of you.
Makes you realize how much of a partnership it really is. All right, well, I think we've covered a lot of ground here. I'm excited to see what else Zach has up his sleeve as we continue this deep dive.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about Zach George's approach to dog training, and I'm really feeling inspired to put some of this knowledge into action.
Yeah, me too. But inspiration is only the first step. We got to actually apply it to our own lives with our own dogs.
So true. So what are some key takeaways that our listeners can use right away?
I think the most important thing is to remember that training should be enjoyable for both you and your dog.
Yeah, if it feels like a chore or a battle of wills, you're probably not approaching it with the right energy.
Right. Think about it. When you're having fun, you learn better. So ditch the drill sergeant routine and find ways to make those training sessions something you both look forward to.
Totally. High-value treats? Yes. Incorporating games and play? Absolutely.
Keep the sessions short and sweet.
Make it feel like quality time instead of a chore. Oh, and another thing, don't be afraid to get creative with your training environments.
What do you mean?
Well, Zach's video was filmed in a class setting, but that doesn't mean we have to be stuck in our living rooms all the time. Take it to the park, a hiking trail, even a friend's house.
Oh, I love that. A change of scenery can keep things interesting, and it helps your dog generalize those skills to different situations.
Exactly. And speaking of generalizing skills, remember how Zach was constantly watching those dogs in the video? Like he could read their minds.
He was so attuned to their body language, picking up on those subtle cues. That's a skill we can all develop.
Yeah, for sure. It's about paying attention, noticing if your dog seems eager and engaged, or if they're showing signs of stress or confusion.
And if they seem overwhelmed, it's totally okay to take a break. Reevaluate your approach and maybe try a different technique.
There's no shame in that. It's all about figuring out what works best for your individual dog.
And speaking of individual needs, remember, dogs learn at their own pace, just like humans.
Right. There's no such thing as a slow learner when it comes to dogs. Some pick things up quickly, others need a little more time and repetition.
And sometimes we need a little extra guidance ourselves, and that's where a qualified dog trainer can be so helpful.
They can give you that personalized support and help you work through any challenges you might be facing.
It's like having a coach in your corner rooting for you and your dog. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to that connection between you and your dog.
Right. That's what Zach's video really emphasized for me. It's not just about the mechanics of training, it's about building a relationship based on trust and understanding.
Learning to communicate effectively, reading their signals, respecting their boundaries.
The journey of discovery. You're both learning and growing together.
And I think when we approach training with that mindset, it stops feeling like work and starts feeling like a fun adventure with your best friend.
Well said. So to everyone listening out there, remember, every dog is capable of learning and thriving with right guidance and a whole lot of love.
Be patient, be positive, and most importantly, have fun.
And if you want to dive deeper into Zach George's training wisdom, make sure to check out his full YouTube video, Dog Training 101, How to Train ANY DOG the Basics. It's a fantastic resource and a great reminder that we're all in this together on this crazy dog-loving journey. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.